So good morning, everybody. Most of you, if not all, will know me. I'm Debbie Clark. I'm the Customer Account Manager at Metaphorix, and I'm joined by Gary Dukes, who's our Pre-Sales Manager, who will be actually doing the difficult work, which is pressing the buttons and showing you the actual software itself. So welcome to our 2016 webinar. We'll be taking up about 45-50 minutes of your time today, so not too long, and don't forget you'll get the opportunity to ask questions at the end. So the agenda. Now, I am going to do a very quick reminder of NAV 2015. I'm not going to spend too long on this, but as the majority of our base are on 2009, I thought it would be useful just to skim over those points very quickly. But the main bulk of the presentation will be showing you what's new in NAV 2016 in terms of technology, ease of use, and of course, functionality. So first of all, NAV 2015. Well, there are a lot of role-tailored enhancements in 2015, mainly around business intelligence, which meant that you could set KPIs within your role center, which meant that depending on certain parameters, you get different color codes to warn you of things that were going on within the system. There's also a lot of improvements around cash management. So in terms of electronic bank statements, payment reconciliation journals, and electronic payments as well. Report scheduling was introduced, which meant that you could not only create a report or use a standard report, but schedule it to run at a certain time. And you could also point that towards particular users. So when they looked into their role center and looked at the report schedule, they could see if a certain report had been run for them, and they could then go and run it from that point, from actually the role center itself. Big thing for 2015 was that document templates were available in Word, and that means that you as users can go into NAV documents and use your Word skills to change those documents if you want to, particularly in terms of outgoing documents, invoices and so on. Now I have to say, experience has told us that it is actually a little more difficult than simply popping it into Word. It does have its own little foibles and quirks, but the reality is you can still get it into Word and alter it if you want to. NAV 2015 was very much touchscreen friendly, and in fact 2016 takes that even further, and we'll be covering that in a little while, as we will the access via an app. Because this was the first time in 2015 that we were able to get access to NAV from an iPhone or an iPad, so that was a big thing. Client access then. There were 3 clients available: Windows, Web and SharePoint, and also the license types as well available changed into full and limited. Now, it would be fair to say that these were available actually from 2013, so I'm covering that as well. The first type of user or client is your traditional Windows client. So we're looking at people here who are core NAV users, probably in the system all day, inputting, inquiring, reporting and so on. And that's a traditional Windows client, and we talk a lot there about the richness and vividness that we're presenting to the actual user through the role-tailored client. However, we also have the web client, or some of you might think it as a thin client. So it's the ability to access the NAV system through a web browser without having to have a VPN infrastructure, which means that you can get more and more of your remote, extending the reach of NAV, you can get more and more of your remote users easily into the NAV system. Now, we'll cover this later, but in NAV 2016, they've put a load of enhancements into that client, which means that now, if you're a user, you can't really see the differences between the Windows and the web client in terms of functionality and ease of use and all those sorts of things, but we'll come to that a little later. The third type of client, I have to say, I don't know of any of our users that are using this. You may have a SharePoint strategy, you may not have a SharePoint strategy, but certainly if you have, then you can allow users access to NAV data through their SharePoint login as opposed to any other client. So license types, well, full and limited. So the full license is what we would call, if you like, a normal user. So a user that's allowed into everything and anything unless you control it with permissions. But you also have a limited user, and it's quite easy to say here, well, this is just an inquiry user, and that's a good way to think about it. However, limited users can have limited update functions as well. So I'll give you some generic examples. For example, if you've got people entering timesheets into jobs or projects, you only need a limited license for that. Or if you've got users that are raising purchase orders or approving purchase orders, you only need a limited user for that as well. So it's not just an inquiry, it can be used to input information as well. So let's get on to 2016. So technology then, well, this might not mean a lot to you as individual users using NAV. However, this is quite an important point when you're thinking of upgrading in the future, because once you're on 2016, there's lots of tools within the product that make it easier and easier for us to upgrade you. And this is especially useful given Microsoft's current strategy for annual releases. So what are extensions then? Well, extensions allow us to develop modifications without affecting the underlying source code. And that means that the modifications are sitting outside the main database. When we upgrade you, we can take that extension off, upgrade the underlying database, and then reapply that extension package and just tweak it if it doesn't work in certain areas. So it makes the upgrade journey much easier. The other thing around developments is we now have test automation suite, which is lots and lots of automated tests based on normal everyday processes. And this should help us certainly reduce and maybe in certain circumstances even eliminate manual testing, which means that we'll be sending out very clean development. This is the first version of NAV as well that works natively in Azure, which means that you can now look at it properly as software as a service, or SaaS, as you may know it, SaaS. Now, for a long while, we've been able to offer NAV as IaaS, which stands for Infrastructure as a Service, where you simply have your server in the cloud, maybe in a data center or whatever, and we can put NAV on there for you. It doesn't really matter whether your server's in the cloud or actually on premise. However, software as a service is very different in that it allows you to utilize NAV in a subscription model. So it allows you to put NAV in the cloud, to utilize pooled resources such as space, such as memory, and so on, as and when you need it, and it allows you to pay for all of that month by month by month. So first version we've been able to do that with, and of course this should reduce ongoing costs, because it means you're not looking at hardware actually on your premises that you need to maintain and potentially upgrade. It means you don't have to worry about things like backups, and it means that you only utilize resources when you actually need them. So it does take the hassle out of the on-premise solution, but it's not for everybody. But this is the first version we've been able to offer this. Also, for those of you looking at or using Dynamics CRM, then the integration is now embedded within NAV. So it's absolutely seamless to the user that it's two different products. Yes, they look and feel different because they're doing different things, but the actual integration is very tight now. And I had to put that nice little sales line in there. So it's really linking the front office with the back office and optimizing the lead to cash experience. So ease of use. Well, universal app. Again, for those of you not technical, this probably doesn't matter to you whether it's universal or not, but the fact it is now one app on all devices makes life an awful lot easier. So it doesn't matter whether you're on an iDevice or whether you're on Android, the app will work for you. And it does deliver the role-tailored client to that device. Now remember, if you're accessing it through a phone, you've got to think about what details you can see on a small phone screen, because it will resize the screen for you. So you have to think about what you want to have a look at. But certainly in a tablet environment, you can see everything you would see if you were on sort of a Windows client or whatever. It is optimized for touch and keyboard and mouse, so it's not just a touch application. And it also includes support for the camera and location facilities that you've got within your device. So I'll use a generic example. It means that you could take a photo of something with your device and immediately attach it to a transaction within NAV. So that's quite powerful. So web client enhancements, I touched on this earlier. The web client now, so that thin client to allow remote access without a VPN infrastructure. The web client looks and feels almost virtually like the Windows client now, so no difference in the user experience. I'm not going to read all of these out because Gary's going to give you a look at these in a moment on the actual product, but lots and lots of enhancements to the web, and as you can see, the tablet as well. So Gary's going to show you that now.
Okay, thanks Debbie. So I'm just going to tab across now to have a look at the web client. Just one brief comment here is that it's supported in multiple browsers, so not just the Microsoft platforms of Edge and Internet Explorer. You can run this through Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera, other browsers as well are supported. As you can see here in the web client now, I can see my role center. So very similar to the client, the Windows client version, as Debbie was just saying there. I've still got my ribbon bar across the top, so all my functions, all my reports, I can still run through the web client. My navigation window down the left-hand side is still there. In the center, I still have all of my activity queue, so I can see what's going on in the business. And I still have charts and reports coming through here as well. So very, very similar to the web client to the desktop client. You've still got a global search as well, so it works in the same way as on the desktop client. If I just type in VAT, for example, it will try and find anything called VAT on the system. So you can still search for pages and reports that way too. Well, if we move through and have a look at a list of records, if I go into sales orders as an example, so there's our list of sales orders on the system. Still have the ribbon bar visible across the top with all of our functions, so I can still post orders, email out from the system, push data to Excel, so the Office integration is still there in the web client. One of the key changes here is that when you're looking at the list of records, in the earlier versions of the web client, it could only show so many records per page. So you'd scroll down so far and then you'd have to click onto page 2 to load the next 10 or 20 records. In this latest version, as I scroll down, it keeps fetching more data as you go. So you can see the full list of records on one screen like you can in the Windows client. You can work with the columns here as well. So if I click on a column, I can choose to sort it or filter it by that column, or show and hide columns like you can in the desktop version. So very, very similar experience there. And we also have this quite powerful cross-column filtering and searching tool. If I click up here and then type in a filter, so if I type in, for example, 10,000, which I recognize as a customer code, if I key that in and press enter, the system will then apply that filter to, in this case, the sell to customer number field, because it recognizes that as valid data for that field and it will filter it down. If I click to clear that, and then type in a different filter, so let's say salesperson code, if I use PS, which I know is a salesperson, again, it recognizes that as valid data and applies the filter to the appropriate column. So all the searching and filtering is quite powerful now in the web client. We also have access to our fact boxes on the right hand side. They're collapsed at the moment, hidden out of the way. If I click on my little arrow here, that will then open up the fact boxes, so you can still see all of those here as well. So still access to related information in the list views. Then if we actually look at a record itself, so if I open up a sales order, just so we can see one of these. So again, still got full functionality in the ribbon bar. We can still email and do postings, use the approval system, use notes, use links to documents. So we still have some document management options in the web client here. We can manage our line information as well. So up here we can access all the functions and line data, so we can look at order tracking or reservations. So we can do all of that in here as well. We still have our fact boxes on the right hand side, so we can still expand or collapse those to see more data as we want to. And also the tabs as well. So if I just scroll down, we can see all the other fast tabs, so shipping, invoicing and so on. In the previous version of the web client, they were all open by default. You couldn't close them or open them. They're all just open, so you have to scroll down through a lot of information. Now they can be expanded or collapsed, and you can view the promoted fields as well, so you don't need to drill into the data. Let me just close that record. Let's just get back home. So that's a very quick tour of the web client there, but hopefully from that you can see it's a much more closely aligned experience of the full desktop client. You've got around about 95% of the same functionality, just a few things missing like Outlook integration and the notifications window. Other than that, very closely aligned experience.
Thank you, Gary. So functionality then. Yes, there's some functionality around finance. Sometimes finance gets missed, so we like to applaud this. First thing is a posting preview, which means that as you go and post a transaction, it will come up with a little box and say, right, you're about to post these items to these accounts. Are you happy with that? So it gives you the opportunity to make sure you've done it right before you post it and then maybe have to correct it afterwards. Automatic deferrals. Lost count at how many people have asked us for these over the years, and in fact it suits our business as well. This is where obviously you want to post a revenue or expense, but you don't want it to go into one specific period. So an example would be you're posting something in January, but you actually want to recognise that over the next 12 months. Well, you can do that over a defined schedule now to make that occur without worrying about reversing journals and prepayments and all those sorts of things. That's available for sales and purchasing documents and general journals. And formatting and distributing documents. We've talked a little bit about documents being able, the ability to have see documents in a Word template. Well, particularly with statements, you can now tag a customer with receiving a certain template for their statement. So if there is a different format that you want to send out to different customers or a specific customer, you can now do that within NAV. Gary's going to show us that now.
Okay, thanks Debbie. So I've got a few things to go through here. So I'm just going to tab over now to the full desktop client. And I'm going to start by looking at the document sending profiles. In this case, I'll go to a customer account so we can see how this works. So let's use the Canon Group as our example. So what this gives you is an extra field now on the communication tab on the customer card in this case. So there's the customer's email address, that's a standard field, but we now have the document sending profile field as well. This is just a template. So I'll go into the options that live behind that. You can see the rules that we're going to set up. So you can create a number of different sending profiles. They can differ per customer. Some customers might want PDF, some might want it sent in one of the electronic document formats, which we're going to touch on a little bit later on. But for this one, I'm going to say the rule is that this customer has their documents emailed to them in PDF format. So in here we can define whether the document is sent to a printer or to a file on your a hard drive. If we're emailing it out, the system can prompt you what settings to use, or you can tell it to use some defaults. And then how the attachment goes out. So it can go as a PDF, one of the electronic document formats, or both. So that's where the actual profile lives. So how that actually works, so if we go to a sales invoice, for example, let's have a look at this top one. So on the ribbon bar, we've still got our post button, and post and print will still be in there as well, but you now have a post and email option. So when you press that, that will post the document, and in this case it will email it out. So it will look to those rules that we've just seen on the customer card to work out what to do with it, whether to send it as PDF or to use one of the electronic document formats to distribute it, and it will use the email address that's on that customer card. So that's how that will work, and so we've got that in sales and purchase as well. We can do that. Then the next thing to look at here, as the button is right next to it, is the preview posting functionality. So this enables you to effectively just preview what will happen if you post this document, in this case a sales invoice. So looking at the line information, it's a software contract worth £2,000. The GL account is 5797. If I just want to double check that everything will get posted through correctly, I can use my preview posting functionality to do that. So if I just click into here, so this will now tell me if I post this document, or when I post this document, I'm going to generate 3 entries in my GL table, and then 1 each in my customer ledger entry, VAT and detail customer ledger entry tables. And I can drill down again, so if I want to see the actual breakdown, if I click onto the 3 there, so I can see the actual individual postings into the general ledger. So I can see we've got 2,000 going to 5797, which should be the contracts account. There it is. 5611, that should be a VAT account. And 2310 should be the customer's account in the balance sheet. like so. So that all looks correct, so that one is okay to post through. If something is incorrect or may not be going to the right account or something like that, you've got something configured incorrectly, you can then fix it at this point before you post it and affect the GL. It's one of those things, some of you may have come across this over the years. Once something's posted through, it can be quite tricky and time consuming to reverse those entries out. You'll often end up reversing journals or doing credits and re-invoicing. With this admittedly small piece of functionality, it can save a lot of time though and headaches. Okay, and then the third thing to look at on the finance side is the deferrals. As Debbie said, a lot of people have asked for this functionality over the years, and it's finally been added to NAV. So on the lines, I'm on the sales invoice, but this is also true for purchase invoices. If I just scroll across over here, you can see a field where we can enter the deferral code. So it's a small drop down. Again, you can create as many of these deferral templates as you like, and within that template you set up rules for the number of periods and how you want to split the amount out. So there's one I've set up for 12 months. So I want to defer this over a 12-month period. And then on my line option here, I can then view the deferral schedule. So if I just select that there, that will then give me a small window that tells me the actual breakdown. So that's that amount of £2,000 is being split over the periods in a pretty much equal amount. There's a slight adjustment at the bottom there for the last period. And you can see some of the rules up here. So how you're going to calculate it, equal per period, days per period, or a user defined one, so you can customize this as well. What the start date is going to be, so it could be the current date or the date of the next period or however it might be. So there are some options in there to do that. Then again, once that's posted through, that will then post that in that deferred schedule over that, in this case, 12 months period. So another small piece of functionality that's been added, but another one that a lot of people have asked for over the years and can save a lot of time.
Thanks. So onto electronic transactions. Now, this is, I need to state this first of all, this is not to replace EDI. As most of you are aware, EDI launched many, many years ago as a standard, is never actually quite standard because it really depends who you're dealing with as to what information needs to come to and from. So this is looking at simple business to business or business to government transactions. This allows you to send and receive files in and out of NAV, or use a document exchange service to help you to do that. And the idea of this is that it can replace the old data ports or the newer XML ports that we've had to use for exchanging data. Now, as this is now a standard, it only supports at the moment PEPL and TradeShift, but we expect that to expand as the product matures. Now, I will say here it's only for purchase invoices at the moment, okay? You can send out sales invoices, but we can't get sales invoices in at the moment, okay? So just putting that caveat on top of this. But the idea is you can use this standard service to get purchase invoices in and out of NAV using a template, and it will allow you as well to get currency rates for those transactions automatically from maybe a cloud-based exchange rate service, which means that instead of looking at master files that you might have set within NAV, it means that you can go and get an exchange rate that's up to the minute, up to date. That might suit your business better than looking at the master files. And as I said, it's just for purchasing, so purchase invoices, purchase credits, and general journals as well. So not sales invoices at the moment, although we can send sales invoices out using this standard. So document management. Now, when we're talking about document management, we're talking here about capture, and there's two levels to what you can expect with 2016. Now, this first level is within standard NAV and available to you. So this allows you to add PDFs or images to NAV transactions. It's got camera integration for your devices. So the example I used earlier, you might want to take a picture of something and attach it to a NAV transaction immediately. You can do that. At the moment, it'll allow you from that image to say, right, this is a purchase invoice or this is a journal line, and it will pull that entry input screen up for you to allow you to enter the information. And of course, once you've entered the information, it will automatically attach that image to the transaction that you've just created. If you are on Role Tailored Client, you'll know you've got a link screen on the right-hand side. That's where it puts the link to the document. So as you're looking at the transaction, whether you've just created it or whether you're looking at it in an inquiry later on, you can click on that link and it will take you automatically to the scanned image you started off with. So that's all standard within NAV 2016. However, you can take that a step further if you want to, and that is to introduce optical capture recognition, which means that once a document is in that format, you can start using the data it recognises to help you input the information into NAV. So first of all, how does it capture that information? Well, at the moment, the integration is with the Cloud OCR service ReadSoft Online, but that might expand in the future, of course. ReadSoft Online is a free service up to 75 scans per month, and obviously the more you use it, they apply charges, of course. And you get all of your scanned documents there by scanning images and popping them into your cloud service, or importing PDFs, or you can email directly to the cloud and it will automatically recognise it's coming from you and pop it into your account. So what does it do then once it's in an OCR, once a document is in an OCR format? Well, it can recognise the data within that document. Now, at the moment, it's only purchase invoices and purchase invoice lines, and Gary will be showing you that in a moment. But the idea is that NAV can look at that document and say, right, I recognise this as a purchase invoice, and I recognise the fields I'm supposed to be looking for, like date, like supplier number, like item lines, like the GL codes that those item lines refer to, because you can do all of this mapping. And it will automatically populate the fields that it can recognise into your NAV transaction to save you from manually entering it. Now, obviously, we can't trust technology completely. So, of course, you've got that manual intervention where you can say, no, that's wrong, or I can see that field isn't mapped, so I've got to put that in myself. But it helps you create the NAV document itself without manual input. Obviously, it can only populate the fields it can without the data, with the data it's got and it recognises. So you can obviously supplement that data. You've got total control, in other words, over that transaction. So Gary's going to show us that now.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. So let's get back over into NAV. Okay, so for this part of the demo, I need to move into my incoming documents area. So this is where we can start picking up those external files and pulling them into the database. So up here on my ribbon bar, I can select Create from File, and you can then pick up a variety of different file types. If I just go to the drop down here, you can see a variety of picture formats, so JPEGs and bitmaps, PDFs, and the Word formats like documents, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, even emails and XML files. So you can use all these kind of external file formats to pull data into NAV and create documents from them. But I'm going to use this PDF file I've got here. So let's just click on that and then say open. So that will then give me a window for my incoming document where I can then tell NAV what I want to do with it. So the first level, as Debbie said, is very simply you pick up the file and then create a document, and then you key in the data that says this is a purchase invoice for this supplier and it's these values and these items. So that's one level, and it will have that attachment. The second level is to actually go and push this out to the OCR service, so we can let the cloud OCR system do that work for us. So up here I'm going to select Send to OCR service, and in a second that will tell me that's been sent off successfully, and it will then populate a few fields to say this is the date and time that was sent out to ReadSoft Online. So I just need to give it about 30 seconds or so for ReadSoft Online to do its thing. So what that's doing is it will take that PDF, scan it into its system, recognise the fields that it can. The ones that it can't, we'll be able to correct when they come back down to us when we pull the document back into NAV. Do all the field mappings for us, and then we can then get that back into NAV, and then at the end of it create our purchase invoice. As Debbie said, it's a completely free service up to 75 scans. After that, you're charged a flat rate, or you can subscribe to it as well. But if you're not processing that many invoices a month, and this is completely out of the box with NAV, it's a good option for a lot of people. So hopefully by now I've talked for just long enough for that to have done its thing. So if I now select Receive from OCR Service, that should come back into NAV. Okay, so great, document successfully received. So what we should now see are these boxes here that are greyed out at the moment and empty. The data should be populated, so things like the vendor name and their VAT number, the invoice number and the amounts and so on. So if I click on OK, and there we can see our data has been pulled through, so the vendor name has come through, the invoice number and so on. But at this point we may need to make some corrections, so if some data hasn't come through or it's come through in the wrong field or the wrong format, we can still correct it by going into this screen here, correct OCR data. So if I just select that, so we can see side by side what the OCR service has come up with and what's been passed into our NAV fields. We can of course view the files side by side. So if I select show file from my menu here, that will then open up the original document that we scanned in this case the PDF. So I could then just position those side by side like so and just do a visual comparison to see if the data has come across correctly. So for example, if the invoice number was wrong, I could just click into here and correct it, or if the order number had gone into the incorrect field, you could fix it like so. Just to show, I can just correct that, say the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as an example. Once we've made our corrections in here, we can then use this option to send feedback back to the Cloud OCR service for ReadSoft Online. So it will learn, so for next time that we send invoices through, it knows what to do with the data. So if it does get things wrong, it will learn as it goes. So the more invoices it processes, the better it gets at recognising your data. If that's okay, we just select OK. Then we just close that PDF screen down there. So we've said that that's all the data looks okay there. We can as well check how the line items have been mapped to the GL account. So this is an invoice for a service. If I look in map text to account in here, we can see I've set up a default mapping, so everything for Lewis Home Furniture goes to 8220. If I just drill into that, this is inspection fees, which is what was on the invoice. This could of course be something different, so if you're setting these up for gas and electric or rates or broadband internet, wherever it might be, mapping text might be something that appears on the invoice, so broadband charge for this period, and you could then map that to a default account number. So next time one of those invoices comes through, it creates this line for you. You don't have to go and map it all manually. So everything looks okay. So the final step then is to actually go and create the document. So create my purchase invoice from all the data that we've received. So if I say create document up here, the system will check for any errors that it might find in the creation process. You can see that it's been created but with warnings. So it has created the document, but just down at the bottom here, you'll have a list of any warnings or errors that it finds as part of creating that document. In this case, it's warning me about the amount being different. So the amount that is created on the invoice was different to the scan. In this case, I know that's because of the VAT is set up slightly differently now to what was on the purchase invoice. But any errors you can check there and find out what may have gone wrong and then correct it. But this has created the purchase invoice for me, and there's a link directly to the invoice there, purchase invoice number 1024. I can click on the link there and that will then take me straight to that document, so we can see there, Lewis Home Furniture, the invoice number 12345, which I changed it to, and our line entry there, GL8220, and our amounts have come through. And just on the right hand side in our documents file there, we can see a link to the PDF and the XML data as well that's been used for the OCR service. Once the invoice is on, we can then post it or send it through the NAV approvals process using workflow, which we'll come to in a few minutes.
Thank you. So, as if by magic, as Gary just said, workflow now standard within 2016, and there are 20 standard templates that fall out of the box, so you don't need to be a developer or whatever to set these workflows up. There are templates that come with 2016. Now, outside of those templates, other templates can be created. Workflow is embedded within NAV 2016, but for those you do need to create a new one, you do need a little bit of code, so you may need a little bit of help with that. But with the templates, you can either use those, or there's an easy workflow builder, which means that you can amend and add to the templates that are there already. And as you'd expect with workflow, they can include approvals, notifications, and process automation. And Gary's going to show us that now.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. So it's back over to Nav, and now I'm going to go first into the workflow templates, just so you can see those 20 or so out of the box areas that you do get. So there's lots of kind of finance workflows, purchase documents, sales documents. In purchase, a lot of approval workflows. So what they've done here is they've taken the standard NAV approvals process, which was good but fairly limited in a way. You could only have sort of one delegate and one level. But now using the workflow option, you can create a true approval workflow with teams of people that need to approve, or a proper hierarchy of approvers within that, and flows depending on amounts or customer accounts, purchase accounts, that kind of thing. So proper workflow in the system. Other types of workflow you can have, so we've got sales approvals as well, so it lives on that side too. And things like new customer approval, so someone creates a new customer or a new supplier and you need to approve that. Or if fields are changed on a record, we can use those as well. So let's have a look at some of the workflows that have actually been created using those templates. So in sales and marketing, for example, we had the standard workflow for customer credit limit change approval. I've taken that and changed it and created one called the salesperson change. So what this will do, it will monitor for any change to the salesperson code on a customer card and then push that through the approval workflow. So it will send it to an approver somewhere, and it won't actually change the record until that approval has been processed through the system. So if we go to a customer card, let's just pick one of these. Let's take that one there. So at the moment that is set to salesperson code DC, so that's set to Debbie at the moment. If I wanted to change that to myself or somebody else, if I just use my code. So I've changed that over to myself, but when I close the record, the workflow will kick in at that point and say that salesperson change has been sent for approval. So it hasn't actually changed just yet. So when that record closes, we can see in the list view here, it still says it's assigned to Debbie. That's waiting for the approver. So in this case, the approver is a different NAV user. So on a separate screen here, I'm logged in as a different user. This is Linda. Linda is the workflow approver. So on Linda's screen, she'll have a sales queue for number of workflow approvals. She's got one here that says 3. If I just refresh the screen, it now says 4 because I've created a new one there for her to approve. So the approver goes into their list of requests to approve. They can see everything that's waiting for them to look at, and a due date as well. The red ones are overdue, so in this case there are a few that need looking at. There's the most recent one, so it says here the customer code there, so we can see who the customer is. We can of course open the record to look at it if we want to, and the field that was changed. So the salesperson code was changed from Debbie over to Gary. This is the person that did it, so Metaphorix sales, that's me again, and this is when I as the approver need to push that through the system. If I'm happy with that change, I can just approve it, and it will then change the record in NAV. If I'm not, I can reject it and add some comments to say why I'm rejecting that change, or I could delegate it to somebody else. So if I just say approve that record, that will then clear down from the list of approvals there. And if I then just switch back over to my other screen, and then in the list view, you can just see that's now changed from Debbie over to me. So as soon as that approval has been done, it then pushes that change through to the database. So that customer's now changed over from Debbie to me. So that's a very simple workflow, but as Debbie said, you can build some more complex ones and open it up to other areas. So things like new item approval workflows, that kind of thing.
So the final thing we'd like to show you is about using the data within NAV. Some of you will have heard of Power BI, which is a Microsoft product. It's an analytical tool, a reporting analytical tool based around business intelligence. And it's a free of charge piece of software. Again, it's free of charge to a certain point. So if you want to start publishing data on your website or whatever, you know, then they do start to make charges. But essentially, it's a free of charge piece of software. And what Microsoft have decided to do is embed that within NAV 2016 and supply some predefined dashboards and reports for you that are automatically linking to your live data. So it gives you, on installation of NAV 2016, immediate access to this very, very powerful tool. Now, if you're that way inclined, you know, you can create your own reports and dashboards within Power BI, the Power BI tool, of course. But you can also take the templates that fall out of the box and modify and copy those, or copy and modify those as you want to. So really powerful tool within NAV 2016 linked to your live data.
Okay, so it's back over to me for this part. So just before I tab over to show the live demo, just looking at the screen there, you can see a typical example of the kind of dashboard that you can build. So you can have a variety of different widgets in there. So we've got map views, we've got charts and graphs, lists of information. So you can be very varied when you're building these dashboards. If I just tab across now to my browser, so this is one that I've published up into the cloud. It's just on powerbi.com. If anybody wants to have a look, as Debbie says, it's free. You can just sign up for this and give it a go if you want to. So this dashboard is one that's built for a company that rents out wastewater filtering and cleaning equipment. They wanted to be able to see where in the country they're renting their units, which units are bringing in the most money, and which ones are breaking down the most as well. So from a BI point of view, they can then analyze this data to see best performing and worst performing units. It's the kind of data that you can get from looking at the data in NAV, but it's more easy to see when it's graphically represented like this. So, and it's all interactive as well. So if I'm in my map view here and I want to see what I'm actually renting out in London, well, if I hover the mouse, it will tell me that's London and I've got 10 units rented out, but it doesn't tell me what units I'm renting out. But if I click on London, what we should see then is the other charts that are on my dashboard, they'll filter around it. So I can see here that these ones have applied some filters. So I can see in London, I have settlement units, all water separators, pH correction, and so on. If I click up here into the Midlands, I can see I'm just renting out settlement units and concrete wash water, as an example. And the same is true from this side. So if I wanted to see where I'm renting out my settlement units throughout the whole country, I can just click on this stack here. And again, the map and other charts filter around it. So based on that, I can see I've got units rented out in London, the Midlands, and over in Shrewsbury, I think that is, Shropshire. Okay, so that's how that works. So it's very, very simple and intuitive to use. But you can use it to work out things like best performers and worst performers. That's one of the main reasons to use this kind of system, is that business intelligence that you need. So looking at this, I can see my rental income chart here. The lowest, the worst performer is the concrete wash water units. So if I wanted to drill into that and see a bit more data, if I select that one there, so as the map filters down, I can see I'm renting out these units mostly in the north of the country. Now, my company is based in the Midlands, so that may not be economical for me to continue to supply them if it's just going up to the north. And I can also see it's in the largest number of breakdowns as well. So straight away I can see just a few clicks, it's filtering down the data, so it's telling me that this is not a very good performing unit, so I may want to consider taking it out of operation. So that's just a very quick example of the sort of thing you can do with this. As Debbie said, they've now given you so many dashboards that will just plug straight into NAV. You can, of course, build your own. It comes with a very straightforward to use desktop program that you can download and install if you want to have a play with it and build your own dashboards. And it does link to other data sources as well. So it's not just NAV. You can link it to CRM or other SQL databases or Excel spreadsheets. It can link to other websites as well, and Facebook and Twitter and other sources like that. So very comprehensive in what you can do with data analysis and aggregating it all together and then analysing it.
So before we ask if you have any questions, just a very quick summary just to remind you what you've seen today. Technology then, the first two there, quite technical. Extensions, which means that we can develop in extensions that don't affect the source code, which makes upgrades once you're on 2016 much easier. Test automation suites, which mean that we're going to be sending out much cleaner code to you if we do any development. Does work natively in Azure, which means you can consider software as a service if you want to, if you're thinking of moving away from an on-premise structure. And it does work natively with Dynamics CRM now, so the integration is actually embedded within NAV to make that seamless to the user. Ease of use, well, all about mobile people actually, mobile users. So universal app, which means that any device you can get into your NAV system, and lots of enhancements on the web client and the tablet client, which means that remote users get the same sort of user experience as those users using a desktop within the office. Functionality, some nice bits around finance, posting previews to make sure you're posting to the right place. Deferrals, which allow you to post expenses and or revenues over a number of periods if you want. Customer specific statements based in Word, and you can tag the customer to make sure they get a different format if you want them to. And also remember that electronic invoicing exchange, which allows you on certainly the purchase invoice side, purchase invoices in and out without having to use data ports or XML ports, and we can send sales or invoices out as well. So we talked about document capture. If you remember, there were two levels. One, standard within NAV 2016, which allowed you to recognize a document and use that document to create a transaction with NAV and have it automatically linked to that document. And then the second step, which was OCR, which recognized the data within that scanned document and helped you populate the data to avoid manual input of information. Workflow we looked at as well, which, if you remember, 20 templates out of the box, which you can extend and modify if you want to. But if your requirement is outside of that, we can help you build new workflows. And what we've just seen, Power BI embedded within NAV 2016, linked with your live data from the get-go to allow you to use the data you've got in NAV in a sensible way. So we'll move back to taking you off mute and asking if you have any questions, if you just bear with us. So I hope you enjoyed that. Do you have any questions for us?
Do we have any?
Need to upgrade to 2015 base.
Okay, well, if you have any questions for me after the event, please feel free to email me on debbie.c@metaphorix.co.uk. And thank you for joining us this morning, and hope you found it useful.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Hi, Carsten.
Oh, yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
I can hear you. How can I help you?
Well, I just wondered, we were just testing out if you were even reading the chat box.